My name is Pastor Rick Edmund. I'm 63 years old. I've been the pastor here on Smith Island since the year 2000. I've been in the ministry 5 years before that. Grew up in Ohio, lived 25 years in Pennsylvania. And up in Pennsylvania I learned a good bit about the Chesapeake Bay watershed and was excited when I came down to this area and was asked to be the pastor here on Smith Island because I knew that would combine some of my interest in the environment plus my desire to be a minister. I also am asked sometimes to go and testify or to do some interaction with folks in Annapolis here that have to do with the state government, or even in Washington, D.C. with the federal government. And in 2007 I was asked to testify before Congress as a person of interest that lives out here where we'll probably have some of the first effects of sea level rise if and when that occurs, and it looks like it's going to be more when than if some of these predictions come true of large sheets of ice that are melting in Greenland and in other places. And then the tides seem to be coming up more frequently, coming up higher. Now that could be due to a number of things. It could be that the land is actually sinking a little bit, which wouldn't be out of the question. Or maybe the sea level is rising, or maybe it's the weather patterns are more conductive to higher tides. And a lot of that's controlled by the wind direction. I mostly emphasize the fact that we need to be doing things now. We need to be checking very sure and not just depending upon our political position or depending on what we would like to happen for our children and our grandchildren. I had my 4 grandchildren there at the testimony, introduced them and said when they have their grandchildren, it's going to be the middle of this century, 2050, when we're targeting a lot for different changes that we'd like to see implemented, and in order to stem this seems like a general warming of the climate. And in the Bible it says for the Garden of Eden, and I think the whole world, that the Lord told us to till it and to keep it. And so we've certainly tilled it. We've certainly have been fruitful, and we've multiplied. We have 7 billion people on the planet now. And it's hard to see as we continue to increase in population how we're not going to just continue to use more and more energy and more CO2 generating fuels. And it's hard to see how we're going to be able to stop this, but I think it's the responsible thing to do, to see what we can do in order to be as sure as possible what we can do to slow down the burning of these CO2 gases in order to prevent some real serious problems in the future, much more. Well, the folks have some questions, and in general, people here are certainly have the desire to take care of the bay and even to pray for its restoration back to the way it was. That would be terrific for crabbers and for people who judge for oysters, and for fishermen, for everybody. The fight about was that people live downstream in time. How upset are they going to be about our inactions back right now, which is for them going to be several generations in the past. How selfish we were if we don't put forth some efforts here to do as much as we can in order to preserve the future for them. A lot of people are on the edge. It's hard to think when you drive into West Virginia, and you'll see when you're coming east through West Virginia on, say, Route 68, and you come on a sign that says you're entering the Chesapeake Bay watershed, way up there in the mountains. And so they probably don't think about it too much, and that's understandable. But also, when you talk about on the edge, I think of the tipping point that scientists refer to, that at some unknown point we're just going to get too far away from the fulcrum, away from where that edge is and get to a point where it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to reverse activities and to try to prevent what might be a disaster down the road. But the important thing is we're not sure, so I think we need to be as careful as we can at this point in time. Just that it's a beautiful way of life here. We've got beautiful sunsets, and just sometimes the reflection of the sun off the water onto the marsh grasses you know, we certainly hope this is preserved for a long time, and that future generations will be able to enjoy the same things that we do. But a lot of that depends not just on this scale of the marshland around Smith Island, but on the much broader scale of taking care of what has been entrusted to us. There's a movie coming out called Lorax next year, and I assume it's based on the Dr. Seuss book. And in that book, the Lorax is trying to defend the trees, and so we need to defend nature now against the onslaught of things that can inhibit nature. And another thing I said in my testimony was a quote from the Pogo comic strip from many years ago. And it said, "We've met the enemy, and he is us." So it's up to us to try to do what we can for the people coming after us.